is a Monday, October 26th edition of the TV on Basketball podcast with your host, TV. It is a new season. I am back. I'm better than ever. I know you've seen the new logo. I know you see the new intro. We are back. I'm super excited to talk some NBA basketball. We're going to have a lot of content coming over this off season. Lots of good, nice scheduling changes, and just a lot of better content I have lined up for you, not just for this off season, but for just the NBA season going forward. And I am super excited to talk about that. Yeah, we have a great show for you here today. We're going to be talking about a lot of the coaching changes that have happened ever since I took that break after the NBA Finals. I'm also going to talk about Daryl Morey stepping down as the Rockets GM. And we're going to do a nice, kind of those movie reviews you see online. We're going to do a review of each of the NBA teams starting in the West from this NBA season. Looking at this NBA season only, based on, the preseason predictions. I'm assuming the expectations plus kind of how they compare to the rest of the league. So that's going to be very exciting. And I'm excited just to be back and just talking about basketball. But before we get into this episode, I obviously have to do my plugging. Remember to follow at TV on Basketball on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram for updates on the podcast and for other content. Remember, for my YouTube watchers, remember to hit the subscribe button. That'd be very much appreciated. I'm going to be starting a new YouTube series starting this Wednesday. So if you guys want to check that out, remember to be subscribed. Turn on the notification bell if you choose to do so. And just continue to show support. I'd really much appreciate it. And of course, for my OG podcast listeners, remember, if you're on Apple Podcasts, to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Leave a 5-star review. That'd be very much appreciated. If you send a 5-star review, send me a DM. I will definitely shout you out. And remember, we are also on Podbean, Anchor, and Spotify. All those links can be found in my link tree in my bio. And yeah, I'm just here. I'm excited to start this new season. And I'm going to be talking more about kind of what scheduling changes for this podcast you can expect near the end of this episode. But I'm so antsy right now. I just want to talk some NBA basketball. So let's get right into it with lots of news around the NBA. And the biggest one, in my opinion, that came out from the last time I was talking was that the general manager, the president, whatever you want to call him, Daryl Morey of the Houston Rockets, actually stepped down. He just signed a 5-year contract extension at the end of last season, so we thought he was going to be here for a while, but as it looked like, I guess he just made a decision. I guess it was more of a mutual thing because he said he stepped down, but these things always has different labels to it. But yeah, he is out as the Rockets general manager. He's still going to be there in an advisory role to help find him a new head coach, but he is no longer the general manager. And the Rockets look like they're doing a full reset because not only is he gone, obviously Mike D'Antoni left the organization as well. He said that he wasn't going to renew his contract as well. So the Rockets lots of changes going to be happening this season. So it's going to be very interesting to see where they go forward from here. If we just look at Daryl Morey's resume as the Houston Rockets general manager, he spent 13 seasons with the team, had a very good playoff record, making 10 playoff appearances in his 13 seasons, 2 conference finals appearances, including one where obviously back in 2017 it really looked like the Houston Rockets were going to take down the almighty Golden State Warriors, and they were a Chris Paul injury. And that Chris Paul injury, man, I think it was Game 5 or something, and he couldn't play Game 6 or 7. Really hurt them and honestly prevented them from getting to their having their best chance of winning an NBA championship. And yeah, that was obviously unfortunate. Obviously, he had his most memorable move he made was getting James Harden from the Houston Rockets for, I believe, Jeremy Lamb, Kevin Martin, and I believe the 12th overall pick in the draft following that. And he gave James Harden a chance at being the superstar of the team, giving him his team, giving him the wheel to the car, and he absolutely took advantage of it. And looking at James Harden now, obviously winning an MVP, being the runner-up on multiple occasions, and he's honestly looked at as one of the greatest scorers of this generation. And that wouldn't honestly be possible if Daryl Morey did not trade for him and give him the chance to have his own team here in Houston. If there's one thing that you could say that you can't say about Daryl Morey is that he wasn't innovative. Because if that's going to be his calling card for as long as you're going to remember this guy. This guy always loved talking about the analytics, loved talking about what are like statistically the best ways to win a basketball game, and he always tried to move in with the times. Bring in Mike D'Antoni, like one of the better offensive minds in recent memory, trying to pair him up with one of the greatest offensive players of recent memory in James Harden, and they tried so many different things to try and make this team work. To the point where this year they completely embraced small ball. They had PJ Tucker, a 6'5", 6'4" center, to run the prototypical center position. Who, if you like, in just like prototypical in like NBA history, they're 7-footers, like to defend the paint, and always stand there. But the Houston Rockets weren't like that. They got someone who, they embraced this whole lineup change where everyone can shoot, and I just leave so much space for players like Russell Westbrook and James Harden to, operate. And sure, it didn't really give them a championship, but that's the thing with Daryl Morey. He'll always try these things, no matter what, just to kind of spice things up. So if the people are saying like he was stuck in his ways and stuff like that, no, he just tried different stuff, and if it failed, it failed. That's just the way it is, and he was not afraid whatsoever to take those chances. It's just unfortunate that he wasn't able to get the championship, and now stepping down like as the Houston Rockets GM. I mean, sure didn't get the championship, but he definitely left a lot of success along the way. The Houston Rockets are kind of in a back position right now. Obviously, with the amount of contracts they have, probably have to like run it back with the same lineup next year. And now having this whole new change with having to find a new GM, having to find a new coach, it's gonna be very interesting to see how they, go going forward. So, yeah, Daryl Morey stepping down after a long tenure with the Rockets. Let's see what type of moves the Rockets make next. Besides that, there have been a lot of coaching changes since the last time I spoke here, and 3 in particular I'm going to be discussing here. The first one, we're going to be talking about the Indiana Pacers finding their new head coach. Obviously, they fired Nick McMillan, I believe, after they exited the bubble, and now they bring in another Nate Bjorkgren. I think that's how you pronounce it. He was a former Raptors assistant, former G League head coach, and is now joining the Indiana Pacers. And this is his first head coaching gig, so congrats to him. He was the Raptors assistant for the last 2 seasons. He also was part of the Phoenix Suns coaching staff before that. And he spent a lot of his time in the G League. Like, he kind of has like that Nick Nurse background in terms of how he became like his road to being a head coach. I mean, lots of coaching positions and all over the place. And when I was doing research for him, I mean, this guy has a pretty decent G League record, going 126-74. That's pretty damn good. It's almost like double the amount of wins as he has losses. So this guy definitely knows like how to develop his players, and obviously being under the tutelage of Nick Nurse over these last 2 years, he definitely has picked stuff from his brain, and hopefully he could bring that type of innovativeness to the Indiana Pacers, who definitely need a new voice. And they have a solid team that they have there. Let's see if Nate Bjorkgren can kind of change the culture and maybe take the Pacers to the next level. Another head coaching change that happened. Tyronn Lue. Yes, Tyronn Lue is now the head coach of the Los Angeles Clippers. I know before I took the hiatus, my small hiatus, I was talking about how Tyronn Lue or Sam Cassell were probably the most valid options for the head coaching position for the Clippers. And that's mostly due to the fact that a lot of the issues that they have were internal. And if you bring someone from outside the organization to try and fix their problems, it's gonna be tough because they don't they never really seen the type of chaos that happened within that organization, or the type of stuff that is reported by the beat writers. And the good thing about Tyronn Lue is, look, he has a championship pedigree from coaching LeBron and winning that championship back in 2016, and he's able to manage egos. Having LeBron there, having Kyrie and stuff like that. He definitely was able to manage that. Coming to the Clippers, he, I believe, rejected a short-term deal with the Lakers last year, and it kind of paid off because he now got a 5-year head coaching gig with the Clippers. He saw it all last year being the assistant coach. He saw how all things transpired, so he knows the type of like changes he has to make to the culture in order to get the best out of his players. And he talked about Paul George and Kawhi having to learn from his system, and let's just hope it works out because this guy definitely has the reputation of being a player's coach, and like I said, has a championship pedigree. So hopefully Tyronn Lue can kind of change the culture during the Clippers. I mean, the culture really for that franchise is them like losing constantly and constantly or falling short of expectations. So let's see if he's going to be able to bring the Clippers to prominence, which they were expected of this past season. But hopefully his new voice can just take them to the next level. So congrats to Ty Lue. Let's see if the Clippers are able to take the next step. And the final head coach that got a new job, and the one that garnered the most headlines, was Stan Van Gundy. If you remember, he was doing a lot of commentary during the NBA playoffs if you were watching ESPN. But now he has a new head coaching gig with the New Orleans Pelicans. Obviously, he had some really good years with the Magic back in the day. Taking them to the NBA Finals. Obviously, falling short, but he took them there. The last time he was in the league, he was kind of a general manager / coach of the Detroit Pistons back in the day. Wasn't very successful, but he still is a very NBA renowned head coach, very respected around the league. Lots of guys having just great things to say about him, and now he is here with a young core of the New Orleans Pelicans, and we're gonna have to see what is he gonna be able to do with Zion Williamson, Lonzo Ball, Brandon Ingram, and all of them. For me, I'm not sure how I feel about this. He had a rough stint in the Pistons, but it's the Pistons, and honestly, over the last decade or so, they've just been very incompetent as an organization. Obviously, he's known for his defensive minded, mentality. A lot of reports saying he's from names around the league, they're talking about how he was just great with player development. And when you have players on the Pelicans, who have the tools to become great defenders like Lonzo Ball, Drew Holiday, whether he's there or not, Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, you feel like Stan Van Gundy's going to get the best out of them. But obviously, we have to take his recent run with the Pistons into mind and how that wasn't that great. But Stan Van Gundy is known to taking kind of less talent and elevating them to the next level. And I think the Pelicans just need a new voice in there. Obviously, like I said, he's a well-known name in NBA circles. And I think these guys respect him. These guys should respect him. And hopefully he's going to be able to take them to the next level. So, he has the pieces there. He has some really good young talent. Future superstars, some may say. And let's see if the Pelicans are going to, take that next step. Because they had an easy NBA bubble schedule and they were able to take advantage of that and even get into the play-in game, which is highly unfortunate. So hopefully Stan Van Gundy can, change the culture there and, take this team to the potential that they believe that they could be, with Zion Williamson and all of these guys. So yeah, those are all the coaching changes. Tell me down below whether you like these changes. And yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how these different teams are going to look going into next season and if these changes are actually going to show any positive or negative impact on these teams. But now we're going to go into the season review. I'm going to break this down into two parts. Next week, I'm going to be talking about the Eastern Conference as well as some of the news that are happening from this week. And yeah, so today we're going to be looking at the West Conferences. The way I'm going to do this is giving them a star rating out of 5 and just giving honestly my type of review as if they were a movie and just talking about kind of the season just passed in general. We're going to be going by division, and I'm going to give a short, hopefully keep it short, kind of description for how I saw this, what type of sort of star review I'm going to give for each team. So I'm very excited about that. And we're going to start in the Northwest Division, and we're going to start here with the Denver Nuggets. I gave them a 4.5 stars out of 5. And the way I like to look at this Denver Nuggets team is a team that exceeded expectations. A story where you can argue that the supporting actor, in this case Jamal Murray, kind of superseded the main actor, which is Nikola Jokic. And I wouldn't completely argue, especially during the playoff run. You have a mix of young and old favorites, and the young guys there, so like Michael Porter Jr. and Bol Bol, telling the league that they're gonna be here for a while. A lot of positives to take out of this. I mean, in the bubble, Michael Porter Jr. Excelled, especially during the cheating games. I believe he made an all bubble team as well, which is very good to see. Jamal Murray had a fantastic playoff run in the bubble. He absolutely went off some games. I mean, he had two 50-point games in the Utah series, and he just had some phenomenal games against two of the top teams in the league in terms of the Clippers and the Lakers. You saw Jokic look absolutely awesome in the bubble. Honestly, ever since November. I mean, we all know that Nikola Jokic starts off slow, but he picked it up again and honestly played at a near NBA level. The supporting cast played really good this year. Obviously, I talked about Michael Porter. You saw some glimpses of Bol Bol in that bubble, and hopefully he can get some more playing time next year. And you also have just a lot of good supporting guys with Jeremy Grant, Gary Harris, Paul Millsap, Monty Morris. Just a lot of those guys absolutely step up when they were needed to. And speaking of those guys, I mean, if they really want to make trades, I mean, they have the trade value to, or at least enough value in that roster to make a major deal if they so choose. There's not a lot of bad things to say about this team as well. Giving them 4.5 stars out of 5. I mean, there's not a lot to talk about that's bad. I mean, I guess they just had a slow start really, and they didn't make it to the finals. Those are really my only two gripes about this team. I just want to see if Jamal Murray is going to take that next step next year in a sense where he could do this on a nightly basis, a 25 point per game scorer. Because if they have someone like that, the they have one of the highest ceilings in the league, and especially because they're so young, they can really make some noise. So, a great season for the Denver Nuggets. I'm giving them a high rating, like I said, 4.5 out of 5. And I'm very excited to see what they're going to do going forward because this past season was very successful. Especially keep completing those 2-3-1 comebacks, against the Jazz and the Clippers. They definitely made some history. Let's move on to the Oklahoma City Thunder. And I gave them another good rating, 4 out of 5 stars. And the way I would like to describe this team is a story where I would never have guessed that they would be this good. Especially when you see the cast of these players coming into the season, you'd be like, I don't know what to make of this. Probably not going to fit in well. They're probably going to be a lower bottom, a bottom half team. But they completely defied all expectations. And you just look at the old man in Chris Paul, and we thought, he doesn't have the ability anymore to run a team. But he has proven to us that he is still capable of that, and he could still do what he does going forward. 4 out of 5 stars is a lot, and there's a lot of good things to take away from the season. Obviously, they defied all expectations. They had a good look at the young guys, with Darius Bazley, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander taking that next step. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander actually had a fantastic season as well. They found an absolute gem in Luguentz Dort to be kind of that guard stopper as well, and he has shown lots of good flashes with the Oklahoma City Thunder. And they kind of revived Chris Paul and made him a lot more respectable now because people look at his contract, see his final days in Houston, and think there's no way that this guy has anything left in the tank, especially being able to lead a team. And he completely got rid of that narrative. He took these young guys and just shot them to the moon. Honestly, they made it to this, I believe, the 5th seed in the West, and they took the Houston Rockets to 7 games, which is highly impressive. Obviously, it was a first round exit, so I couldn't really put them much higher than 4 stars out of 5. They were a 5th seed, and they honestly had a rough bubble. I mean, people forget, in the seeding games they kind of struggled, and going down 2-0 against the Rockets, they did not look like the team they did pre-bubble. But they started to pick it up, late, and even though they couldn't get out of the first round, they still showed some glimpses of, just a very good team. And that's all you got to, that's all you could say. I mean, it was a very successful season just because they surprised everyone, and it was just really good to see a redemption season for Chris Paul for sure. So 4 out of 5 stars for the Oklahoma City Thunder. I'm gonna try to speed this up a little bit. We're going to be going to the Utah Jazz. I am giving them 2.8 stars out of 5. The way I like to look at the Jazz is this was a story where they had lots of twists and turns since its last iteration, but I am still left unsatisfied. And that's how I really do feel about the Utah Jazz. You know, they were able to bounce back after that COVID mishap with, Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert. They, like, near the end, especially in that first round, they kind of looked like that prominent Jazz team that we knew could succeed, like, from past seasons. Mitchell and Gobert honestly just looked like really good players once again. Rudy Gobert looking like one of the best defenders in the league. Donovan Mitchell looking like one of the better guards in the league. Great addition, bringing in Bojan Bogdanovic, and Mike Conley, although started off slow, finally got it going in the playoffs. But there are a lot of cons in here. The amount of injuries. With Mike Conley going out for a bit. The whole situation with Bojan Bogdanovic, where he couldn't even be in the bubble because of shoulder surgery, like that was honestly highly unfortunate. The whole issue with Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert definitely like really hindered their season. They didn't really like improve at all as well. I mean, that's the reason why I just have them like very average at 2.8 stars out of 5. They were the 6th seed, and they just couldn't get out of the first round once again. And that's why I just think that it's kind of hard to put them anywhere else, like anything like higher than this rating. I think I'm being a little generous, but the Utah Jazz still had, a good season. There's a lot to build off of this, but I cannot give them higher than 2.8 stars out of 5. We move on to the next team, and we're going to be talking about the Portland Trail Blazers, and I give their season a 2.5 stars out of 5. The way I like to say, look at the Blazers is the first 80% of the season was a complete disappointment, but the end showed us why there is still hope for this organization. It was a great end to the season. They had a fantastic bubble. Damian Lillard looked like honestly the best point guard in the league. They got healthy near the very end, obviously getting back Yusuf Nurkic. Zach Collins got injured again, but I think he should be fine for next season. And they got like a lot of like redemption stories, out of Hassan Whiteside, who had honestly an underrated good year, revived Carmelo Anthony and made him a valuable piece in the NBA again. They had people like Garrett Trent who could find a role on their team, and they just looked like they like had especially near the end of the season that they were better than what they were perceived as. I mean, they were the 8th seed, but if they were healthy all season, let's be honest, they're like maybe a 6th to 3rd seed on the right days. So they definitely showed that they're still capable of that, but honestly, like the injuries had them early. Like they just did not have a great season before the bubble. Was out of the, like I said, out of the playoff picture for a while. And it was just a major step back from last year. I mean, they made it to the Western Conference Finals. Although they got swept, I mean, they still made it there. And they lost the 5 games in the first round. That is a huge step back. They looked horrible defensively. I talked about that throughout the bubble. And they're just like honestly just disappointing throughout the entire season. Obviously, a lot of that due to injury, but you just gotta, when you have people like Damian Lillard, they should be able to carry you past a certain point. And they just weren't able to last year. So the Portland Trail Blazers, 2.5 stars out of 5. We're going to move on to the Minnesota Timberwolves. And if you see this thumbnail, I'm not joking. I'm giving this team 0.5 stars out of 5. And the way I like to look at this is the production has always been bad for this organization. Even if you add, it's like looking at a movie. Even if you add like a Leonardo DiCaprio, a young Leonardo DiCaprio, to this to a movie, it just can't be saved because there's just not a good enough supporting cast or management around it. And that's all I see about the Timberwolves. I mean, all the positives I can come up with are just transactions they made throughout the season. Getting Malik Beasley on an absolute steal of a deal. They got D'Angelo Russell to finally have like that kind of a more consistent second star beside Karl Anthony Towns. But they have gone nowhere. They have gone absolutely nowhere. There's no way a player that of Karl Anthony Towns' caliber, like he's literally becoming the new way, like the 2020 version of DeMarcus Cousins. Just a bad team over and over again. I mean, you have a great player in Cat, and you just cannot get out of like your old white habits, and that's what it is. I mean, they had 1 playoff appearances in the last 16 years, and the reason like why they made it there was because of Jimmy Butler, and you can see what type of team, what player Jimmy Butler can be when you have the right pieces around him. They're just disappointing, and they need to make changes. I mean, they have the number 1 overall pick. Hopefully, they can get some changes next year. But at one point or another, we got to point Karl Anthony Towns and say, are you fit to be a leader? And we're getting to that point where we definitely have to question that soon. So I give the Timberwolves zero point 0.5 stars out of 5. We move on to the Southwest Division, and we're going to be starting with the Houston Rockets. I talked about them quite a bit when talking about the Daryl Morey situation, but this season I'm going to be giving them a 3 stars out of 5. The way I like to look at this Rockets team, like I said, the type of review I'm going to give them is this cast stays exciting for trying things out at trying out a lot of different things, but sometimes they take things too far. And sometimes, you got to go with what works in the NBA, because trying to tinker with the style too much could lead to your downfall, and that's what kind of happened with them this year. Harden and Westbrook, no matter how much you want to look like you want to bash them and stuff, they had good regular seasons. Westbrook a near triple-double, James Harden putting up MVP-type numbers. They went all in on small ball, and it worked to a certain extent, so that's a good positive came out this season. They got good production out of their periphery players, such as, Daniel House, Austin Rivers. They brought in Robert Covington, which is a huge addition, and he played really well for them. And they got out of the Clint Capella contract, which is also a positive. But with the Houston Rockets, you got to look at the cons. A short playoff run, as it has been the case over the last few seasons, looked like, they've reached their ceiling. It feels like they really can't get better than this. And you could just tell. I talked about how good small ball was for a short period of time, but it's just not good enough for a finals run. And these guys just keep getting older and older. It just means the championship window is getting smaller and smaller. So three stars out of 5, just because they still had some positives to look at, but I guess for what they want to achieve, they still haven't got close, and that's highly unfortunate. So I'm giving the Rockets 3 stars out of 5. We move on to the next team, and we're going to be talking about the Dallas Mavericks. And I'm going to give them 3.9 stars out of 5 here, because they honestly had a better season than I think even they would have imagined. The way I like to look at the Mavs is they broke records that they probably didn't think was possible. Still need some tinkering within the roster, but having an all-time grade, a potential all-time grade, can make the process a lot easier. And that's what they have here in Luka Doncic. I mean, he just went to superstardom from here to here, all of a sudden. And when you have someone that great, it makes everything fall in line just a lot easier. Kristaps Porzingis looked absolutely fantastic in the bubble, and I think would be a fantastic running mate for Luka Doncic for at least the foreseeable future. And when it comes to the cons about this team, I mean, they were just not great on the defensive end. Obviously, couldn't get out the first round. They were, I believe, the 7th seed. But there's just a lot of pros to take out from this season, and just going forward, I mean, the Mavericks are one of those teams that have just one of those super high ceilings. And if Doncic can continue to play the way he's playing, the Mavs are a competent organization, so I know they're going to put the right cast around him. This team is going to be good for years to come, and I think they see this season as a big success, and that's why I gave them 3.9 stars out of 5. Still not as good as some of these other Western Conference teams, but they will definitely take the results that they had this year. Another team that exceeded expectations, the Memphis Grizzlies, and I'm going to give them 3.4 stars out of 5. The way I like to look at the Grizzlies, we were used to their old style, the grit and grind and all that, but this is 2020, and they have a cast that moves with the times, and all they have to do now is let them grow, and they're going to get results. I honestly thought they were going to be the worst team in the league this year going into this, and they honestly blew all my expectations out the water. Ja Morant looks like a future superstar. Triple J, injury aside, he looks like a fantastic forward going into the future, and he just looks like a future all-star. I mean, he looks like a fantastic player. You also have players like Dylan Brooks, who showed up certain moments. I mean, I have my criticisms about him, but he still has some potential. Grayson Allen showed that he could be a good piece moving forward. And what I like about the Grizzlies is that they're just moving away from their old style, bringing in a new coach in Taylor Jenkins. And like I said in my review, they're moving with the times. This is the new 2020 Grizzlies. This is not the green grind that we're used to. And that just made them one of the more fun teams in the league. Obviously, I can't really put them higher because they had a really disappointing bubble. Injuries really derailed them this year. And, they had a hot start, but they just could not, capitalize on it. But I think if you're a Grizzlies fan, you'll definitely take this result, and you just have an eye to the future. You're going to have nice young team going forward, and I'm excited to see what the Grizzlies are going to become in the next few years. We're going to go to a team now that very much disappointed. We're going to go to the San Antonio Spurs. I give them their season a 2 stars out of 5. And the way I like to look at them is, brilliance is not forever. Everyone has their stinkers, but I think this is the bump in the road needed for a brighter future. And the reason I say that is you saw some positive things from the young guys. Kind of like how I talked about the Grizzlies. I mean, this is kind of a new age era for the Spurs as well. When you have people like Keldon Johnson, you have people like DeJounte Murray, Bryn Forbes, whether he's there or not next year, but Derek White as well as a nice young piece. They just showed some nice progression in their game. They had a decent bubble run. I mean, they were actually up to the last game. They actually had a chance to go to the playoffs, but to no avail. That's unfortunate that they couldn't make it. And it's just a completely new Spurs. That's why they just couldn't get things done. Their defense is in the bottom half of the league, which is not Spurs basketball whatsoever. And with LaMarcus Aldridge, getting there in age, DeMar DeRozan, we've seen him as the number one guy, it just doesn't work. The leadership is not there, and you look at this team, it's just not a playoff team. But I think this is the type of lessons that these young guys need to learn. And like I said, this could be a bump in the road that can lead to a brighter future. So, the Spurs are the Spurs. I'm not gonna be surprised if they make the playoffs next year, but it definitely looks like, they need to definitely make some changes and just go all in into the future. We're going to go to a team that we talked about earlier as well. We're going to talk about the New Orleans Pelicans. And I give them a 2.5 stars out of 5 this season. The review I like to give them is that, let's not put too much pressure on a bunch of kids. They were okay, but they would have to get better as they grow together. Zion and Brandon Ingram were definitely the bright spots this season. Zion Williamson only playing, I believe, 30 games or so. Looked absolutely fantastic, and looks like he's going to be a superstar, a star player for them, their number one option going forward. And Brandon Ingram, I mean, having a most improved player type season, 25 points per game as well. There's just a lot of good things to take away from this roster. Lonzo Ball's improvement, hopefully he can build off that. And, the young guys, I didn't even talk about, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Jackson Hayes as well. There's just a lot of growth in that team. But the cons is, Zion Williamson just did not look like he had the legs, the stamina to compete at a high NBA level. That's why there's always those he played very little minutes. He needs to work on that. And they just completely flamed out in the bubble. I mean, I honestly could give them a lower record and it would be justified, but they completely played horrible in the bubble. One of the they had the easiest strength of schedule out of anyone in the bubble, and they couldn't even get close to a play-in tournament. So that's unfortunate, but like I said in my review, they just gotta learn to grow together, and this is a long-term thing. So sure, this is probably not the best season for the New Orleans Pelicans, but there's definitely a lot of room to grow. So Pelicans fans, hopefully you can continue to grow like that. We go into the last division, and we're going to be looking at the Pacific Division, and we're going to be starting off with the NBA champion Los Angeles Lakers. And the review I like to give them is form is temporary, but class is permanent. That's a soccer saying, but that is definitely true in the case of the Los Angeles Lakers. When you have all-time greats, they just make things worse, and they will elevate the level of others around them. And that's what happened with the Lakers. I mean, they won a championship. I gave them 5 stars out of 5. You really cannot give them anything less. They were probably the best team throughout the entire season. And there's not much to say about them. If you want to see my whole thoughts on their season, go look at my last episode. But they were just really, really good throughout this entire season. They were a place of resurgence for people like Rondo and Dwight Howard. And they won a championship. So there's not much to go about that. They had the best season out of anyone in the league. They get 5 stars out of 5. Now we go to the other side of LA, and we're going to be looking at the Clippers. And I had to give them their season 2 out of 5 stars. Yes, you heard me right. 2 out of 5 stars. My review for them is that you could put the best, anything in the world, like scientists, actors, you could put them all in a movie, and it turns out, and this is and what the Clippers are, it just turns out to be a disaster. Fit is just as important as talent, and that's what I think the Clippers learned here. Kawhi and PG had a really good regular season. They looked like for an elite team for the most of the year, And, people like Montrezl Harrell, they got theirs. He won Sixth Man of the Year. But the way they flamed out, second round, they blew a 3-1 lead, where they were heavily favored, mind you. And they just completely disappointed, highly, highly disappointed, especially that Game 7. I don't need to go further. Just watch the Game 7. It was horrible for the Clippers. Chemistry was always a lingering issue throughout the entire year, and it just didn't feel like this team was a team. Like, there were people always in and out of the lineup. Obviously, the bubble was kind of crazy too because Trez's grandmother died, so he had to come in late. Lou Williams had his little mishap, so he had to come in late. It was just a whole mess this season, and they flamed out the way teams like this usually do. And a lot of us thought, their talent's just going to carry them through to the finals. It just doesn't work like that, and fit is just as important. So the Clippers are going to learn that, and like I said, with Ty Lue as their head coach, this is make or break for them because Paul George and Kawhi are going to be free agents after this year. Let's see if they're going to be able to change things up. We're going to go now to the Phoenix Suns. And for this season, I'm going to give them 3 stars out of 5. My review for them is that, for the most part, it is what we expected. Not very good. But when the stars align and the confidence brews, the whole story can change. And that's the way I like to look at this Phoenix Suns team. Pre-bubble, it was everything we thought of the Phoenix Suns. They were trash, and it looked like another disappointing season. But when things are aligned and you just have that confidence within you, like you got nothing to lose, like they had in the bubble, it just works out. They had an 8-0 record. Devin Booker looked like, honestly, a top 3 shooting guard in this league. So many good performances, from Cam Johnson, Mikal Bridges, DeAndre Ayton, Rubio. Just a lot of those guys just taking that next step, especially in the bubble. It shows a lot of hope in the Phoenix Suns organization. I mean, I can't really put them higher because of the stuff that happened before the bubble. And people are going to say, oh, how can they not make it? They went 8-0. They had a bad season. That's why they couldn't make it. And they missed an opportunity at getting into the first round because of that. Obviously, they also were missing Oubre, so that was that kind of sucked, especially near the end of the first part of the season. But there's a lot of positives to take out of this, and I can't really put them higher, like I said, because 80% of the season was pretty bad. But when you look at the last 20%, I think they can really take a lot of that confidence going into next year. And hopefully the Phoenix Suns can, make some noise. Because you're going to hear in the podcast that I did with someone, with a special guest in the next few weeks. We have a lot of hope in this Phoenix Suns team. And I think this could be a real turning point for this organization. We move on to the next team. And we're going to be talking about the Sacramento Kings. And I'm going to give them 1 star out of 5, man. It was a horrible season for them. And the way I like to look at them is that last year they took 1 step forward. This year, 2 steps back. They will just never learn as an organization. There's not much to be positive on here. I mean, I guess Rashawn Holmes was a pleasant surprise this year, averaging over 12 points a game. He had his moments. And Bogdan Bogdanovic had his moments. De'Aaron Fox was still a good player, although had injury problems. But there's just so much things wrong with this team. I mean, for some reason they had one of the highest pace, one of the most the highest paced team in the league last year, or at least near the top, and they just completely slowed things down. I don't get it. You have a bunch of these young guys who like to run, and you just get away from that whole scheme of things. They obviously had that Buddy Hield issue that lingered through the entire season, a lot of shots thrown back from both camps, and it's regression. That's all that was. How do you regress this badly as a young team? Maybe you have to point fingers at Luke Walton, but this is just a completely horrible season for them. And the Kings are going to be the Kings. I mean, they couldn't get it done with DeMarcus Cousins back in the day, and now they're just in the same situation, even with De'Aaron Fox. So we might have to start that campaign soon for get De'Aaron Fox out of Sacramento if they just cannot change things up. So I give the Kings 1 out of 5. And now we're going to go to the final team in the West, and we're going to talk about the almighty Golden State Warriors. This season, I'm going to give them 2 stars out of 5. And my review for them is basically the mighty falls. And the mighty falls pretty badly sometimes. But I have a feeling it won't be for too long. And that's what the thing about the Golden State Warriors is. Steph, Clay, and Draymond. I mean, Steph and Clay were out for basically the entire season. Draymond was just in and out of the lineup. It was just super weird. and all that. So I guess they got to have their rest, which is like kind of like my positive take out of this. I guess they got some good value players in Eric Pascal, and they kind of raised Wiggins' trade value a little bit. And I think they were bad. I mean, they were really bad. I mean, they have the number 2 overall pick, but they were bad in a good year. But at the same time, 2 out of 5 stars is the max I'm gonna do, just because there's some like positive things not on the court, but a lot of things off the court, because they had injuries all year. They were the worst team in the league. There's not a lot of good to get out of that, but at the same time, you just know that the Warriors are gonna bounce back. Whether they're gonna be like they're gonna be in the finals or not is still yet to be determined. But they're gonna bounce back, and with the amount of pieces they have going in the next season, they're gonna be definitely a team to look out for. So 2 out of 5 stars for the Warriors, but trust me, it's gonna be a lot better next year for sure. So those are my teams in the West. If you disagree with any of my star ratings, leave it down in the comments section, and I will definitely try to respond, or just shoot me a DM and all that. I'll definitely don't mind talking basketball with any one of you. But this is the end of today's podcast. Before we go, obviously this is a new season, so that means there's going to be some changes into the scheduling of this. So here's the new schedule I have planned. Every Monday, I'm going to do like a solo podcast, either recapping stuff that's happening in the NBA and having these type of lists, especially for the off season. So it's going to be a solo podcast for myself. On Wednesdays, I'm going to have a reacting series that's going to be going up on YouTube, where I react to some of NBA articles. If you want to shoot some of them my way, if you want me to react to them, send them in my Instagram DMs, message me here on YouTube. I will take those suggestions, and I'm going to be posting that every Wednesday. So it's just a video for YouTube, just me reacting to stuff in the NBA videos, the best dunks and stuff like that. I'm going to be posting that on Wednesdays. And every Friday, we're going to have a guest on the show. Starting this Friday, we're going to be having the sport expert YT. He has an Instagram page with almost 20K followers who loves talking basketball. And we're going to be talking about just a lot of off-season moves that could be potentially happening. So you're going to want to check that out on Friday. And that's just going to be a case for every Friday. I have a lot of guests lined up, and there's going to be a lot of just good basketball talk going forward. So I am very excited about that. And of course, I'm going to keep posting on Instagram. I'm trying to work on some new templates for next week. For the rest of this week, I'm just going to finish off my Bubble Memory series, finishing with the Lakers winning a championship and all that. But yeah, there's just like a lot of good things coming with this podcast, this YouTube channel. I'm very excited about bringing you basketball content going forward. But yeah, I think this is where we're going to end things. Thank you guys for watching or listening. Remember to follow TV on Basketball on all the social media platforms, and to show your support on wherever you're watching. Like, share, and subscribe if you're on YouTube. Show some support on Apple Music, Apple Podcasts. And remember, we're also on Anchor, Spotify, and Podbean as well. So I'm everywhere. You can see my love. You can hear my lovely voice. You can see my lovely face everywhere. And I'm just very excited for what's to come. And yeah, this is where we're going to end the podcast. Thank you guys so much for taking time out of your day to watch this. And hopefully we're going to have a nice, good off season and nice season going forward. But yeah, this is where I'm going to say goodbye. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll talk to you guys on Wednesday. Take it easy, guys. Peace.